This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other toppings, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at Fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosby Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby, top 14, Pro Liga, National, Les Bleus, the French national team, towns, cities, places, bars, stadia, music, fanfare, people, everything that makes the French game so marvellous. Rob, the Six Nations is over. Are you suffering the blues? Good start to the week. Talk me through where you're at.
I think I can't decide whether I'm happy the Six Nations is over or not. I think Super Saturday is quite an arduous task, isn't it? Don't know. It's a long old day. I just kind of got to like half time in the England game. I was like, well, this game's done, but I'm gonna have to watch the other half of it, and then I've got to wait an hour and a bit to get to the game that actually, if there was only one game for me to watch today, that would be the one I'd want to watch. So it's kind of, yeah, it's quite a long ask, especially because it was kind of all wrapped up for the first. I guess the Ireland game was a bit controversial. Well, it was a bit on an edge for a bit, but it wasn't. I wasn't particularly excited by it. But then Ireland don't excite me generally, and the England game was done and dusted by like 25 minutes. So yeah, I'm a bit flat. But also, like, I was really loving the top 14 before the break. So I'm excited about that coming back. That's kind of part of the reason I'm excited for the end of the Six Nations. But I also thought that last game was a lot of fun. How about you? How are you reflecting on the end of the Six Nations?
Oh, well, hazy. As I said, I had my grandma's 95th birthday. So, big Super Saturday. The Glaver was
Super
out.
Sunday, Mad Monday.
The Harvey's Bristol Cream was out. Yeah, I love the Six Nations. I think it's an amazing occasion. It gets you through those dark months, or weeks, as it really is. It's not that long, but yeah, I think as much as it was a strange one, because in theory it was quite nicely set up, but it never felt like there was quite enough jeopardy. I don't think anyone really felt that there was going to be a proper shock. And then when England kind of blew away Wales in the middle, it was like, not sure. Although there were parts in that first half, as we'll discuss in a moment, at the Stade de France, which were pretty exciting. But yeah, looking forward to the return of the top 14, which is looking congested. But we'll get into that in a moment. Rob, on our notes, I've noticed there's a little milestone at the top.
It's not to the day, but it's to the equivalent week. It's not to the day because we didn't get it out until like the Friday last year, but it is the first 1 year since we started the Rosby's Rugby podcast, which I indulged myself by listening back to it today, because I was kind of like, because all the rugby ones were like, I was still on like all the previews from last week and I didn't really have anything else. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to listen to it. And despite how it came out last week, I can say that our sound has improved dramatically since that last one. Also, my editing is now existent, whereas I think it was fairly non-existent before. So I just said then, and no one's going to hear that because that'll go. Whereas I didn't do that sort of thing for the first episode, and it's a long drawn out episode. It's amazing because I was half expecting, like, I was quite cringe at the beginning, and I was kind of half expecting to be like, oh God, we were so amateurish back then, or like, you know, we do it so differently now, and it was kind of a little bit like that, but also like nothing has changed. Like, we still talk about it the same way, like still use the same analogies involving like Mario Kart and the big kid at school, and I'm trying to think what else, and like
lifelong,
like even like the same even like the same, some of the discussion topics were exactly the same as well. It was quite funny.
There we go. Nothing's ever brand new in this world, Rob.
Yeah,
everything is cyclical. Yeah, amazing. Been a few highlights in there. Go on, give me a highlight.
Finding out that Carcassonne award a Côte de Boeuf to their player of the month.
Yeah, it was a real touch, wasn't it?
That kind of takes a beating.
Yeah, nice. Very good.
But yeah, I think actually the big one for us was probably the first. It was the Quins in Toulouse game, wasn't it? Like, it was the first time we actually really dived into part of the reason why we started this, which was because we also love going to France to travel and experience French culture, and hopefully give you guys, the listeners, a kind of how to have a kind of how-to guide on a good weekend away, because we are such experts. What's the geezer that's dead now? That like the American bloke,
Bourdain.
Anthony Bourdain.
Wow.
Some sort of hybrid Rick Stein, Bourdain,
rugby nerd.
Dave Flatman, Scott Quinnell hybrid.
Yeah, so sort of slightly pound shot versions, but I like the ambition.
Any highlights for you? What stood out for you in the last year?
I think it's got. I mean, we've been very lucky. We've had some fantastic guests, both players and journalists, and I can genuinely say I think I've enjoyed them all equally. But there was something about, I think, getting Steve Cummings on.
Yeah.
Having had one brief interaction many Jet Van sets down in a bar some 3.5 years earlier. It's sort of vaguely humoured us that he recalled the evening.
Yeah,
but I think he was being polite. But yeah, I think that was quite amusing how quickly that came around. But yeah, moving on. I've lost my voice then. Feeling emotional at the end. Oh yeah.
You had a big weekend of emotion after your granny's 95th, and that emotion stuck with you.
Oh, there was some What actually stuck with me was we went for I can't remember the last time I had a Chinese sit-down meal.
Oh, wow.
Very much the sort of thing you do with elder relatives.
Yeah.
And the MSG has not left me yet. I can still feel the buzz. Some
Nice.
36 hours later, it was strong. But we are obviously very lucky to have. People say these days that the kind of Scottish Frenchman, the adopted Frenchman, is Johnny Beattie. And as great as he is, we obviously have our very own Scottish rugby fan who eulogises over French rugby. Rob, so give us your unique, slightly partisan take on the events of Friday, where obviously France came past Scotland to secure their Six Nations crown.
Saturday.
What did I say? Sunday.
Friday. Which also happened, to be fair.
It did.
I assume you want to talk about the main one rather than the.
I want to talk about the full noise.
My first take in the comparison to Johnny Beattie is I wish I looked as young as he does, and he's probably got like 7 or 8 years on me, and he looks so fresh, and I don't. It's amazing what living in the south of France, kind of on a one big jolly around the south of France watching rugby, can do to you versus going to an office in the middle of London, well, not even the middle of London, in a concrete hellhole like Hammersmith. Well, how the other half live. But on a more serious note, no, I'm wearing my Breve hoodie. Do you know why this was a Scotland supporting thing, Richard? You probably saw it, some of the responses.
I can only guess that. I know you're a big fan of Sam Johnson, who currently is playing at Breve, but I don't know if there's anything deeper than that.
No, Gregor Townsend played at Breve.
Did he? I know he played at Cast, didn't he?
He played at Cast. I was actually wearing my Cast t-shirt underneath. But yeah, he played at Breve, so I thought that would be a a little nod to Gregor. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of almost more interested to know your views on this, because I found myself, and I remember thinking it last year, kind of because it was the first time that we'd done Ros Beefs and just started it, and I remember with the non-try at the end at Murrayfield being absolutely livid and being quite surprised at how partisan I still was for Scotland, given how much I love this French team. And I was a very angry man on Saturday evening. I was raging about some of the injustices of Matthew Carley on the Scotland team. But I also don't know. I think so much of this is around Finn Russell, and I kind of like the guys that are kind of the fool guys for Scotland are also the heroes. But as soon as they do something wrong, they just get pilloried. And I think like I thought Jamie Ritchie was phenomenal, and yet Matt Carley seemed intent on pinging him off the park. But don't know. I feel like quite a lot of Scotland players outplayed their kind of opposite man. Russell being a key one, albeit I thought Entermac defended pretty well, but I thought some of his stuff in attack was just bad. Certainly first half, Russell completely outplayed him. And I thought it's weird because like Ritchie and Francois Cross is like they're the kind of corresponding people, and everyone knows that Francois Cross is great, but you never see his work. He does the unseen work. Whereas Ritchie is doing the unseen work, but very much being seen. And yet, I'd say they both had a pretty good game. But
yeah, Cross was very good. I felt, I don't know if I feel quite strongly about like Entermac's performance in the first half. I think the first half was a proper spectacle. It was great fun, and there's some serious rugby. It was one of those games. It's so easy to say with hindsight, but particularly with the disallowed try for Scotland before half time. But like it just never felt as good as some of the stuff they were stringing together was, that they were ever going to win that game. And
it
maybe
kind
that's
of felt
just
inevitable that France was going to win.
Yeah, 100%. And I think France were excellent. Mo Afana had a fabulous game, didn't he? He was man of the match. I thought the bench again was excellent and similar to last week, and not kind of universally so. But for France, I think Mayafo off the bench feels like I really like it for France. It feels just like you kind of amplify and turn up his potential impact. And then whilst, I think obviously
I thought he was relatively quiet.
I still think he has so many involvements for a second row when he comes on. He really gets in the game, which you would do when you're 3 tons and 6'100" with great hands as well. But I think what was quite impressive was obviously we spoke about Oscar Jegu, who had a phenomenal game the week before. He was a little bit quieter this time round, but it was dovetailed by Jelonch was really powerful this week when he was a little bit quieter. Cyril Bay I thought was great, having again been a little bit muted last week, certainly by comparison to some of the guys who came off. So yeah, look, I think it was fairly deserved. Maybe I wasn't watching intently enough because I didn't have a huge amount of skin in the game, but the Scotland sort of baffled me ever so slightly in their seeming ease with which they often broke through on first phase and then just didn't quite couldn't penetrate the sort of second defensive line afterwards, particularly in the second half, which is probably testament to France's defence. I did think, in fairness to Scotland as well, both the Fergusons were excellent.
Yeah,
they were outstanding. And actually,
Zander Ferguson played the full 80, which is
but he's done similar, hasn't he? Or I
think he played like 78 last week. Yeah. I saw a stat today, and it was something like the top 5, if you combined carries with tackles, I think, and it was like Jack Morgan, Rory Darge, Zander Ferguson, someone else, I assume it was like Doris or something like that, or Cross maybe, and then Matt Ferguson. But it's like the fact that you've got like all these back rowers and a tight head prop in there is phenomenal. Like, and also I guess kind of we were talking before, like kind of you could compare and contrast the kind of opposite men. I think Zander Ferguson, compare him to like what he's up against, and he's got 2 blokes that are essentially playing half a game each, and he's playing the full game. Winnie Antonio did get a breakdown jackal turnover, didn't he?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, quite early.
But like Aldegheri is just the kind of look at the output from Zander Fagerson compared to Dorian Aldegheri, even though he's fresh in that second half. And Zander Fagerson in like the 70th minute does like 2 carries in the space of 30 seconds. It's just like, Jesus, that is phenomenal for a man that has been scrummaging against Jean-Baptiste Gros and Cyril Bay for 70 minutes.
It was great.
It's and kind of it's type of player that France don't produce. It's a very different, 2 very different ways of doing your tight head props, isn't it? You've kind of got 2 lumps who are quite hard to shift, or you've got like a really technical work rate guy who gets absolutely everything out of the raw materials he's got.
Yeah. And then the other type, the French tight head prop, is the one who appears to struggle in the scrum, but is more fun and more destructive than anyone else, like ball in hand. There's somewhere in the middle of those. There's a hybrid of there's still probably a little bit of a tiny area of weakness, isn't it? Unless they can get like Colom and Tatafu actually scrummaging big. Although Tatafu's been injured, isn't he? So that's a bit unfair.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Scotland gave it pretty good. Blair Kinghorn of Toulouse was magnificent as well.
I think the Scottish. I think it was interesting because I actually kind of found myself, other than the Fagersons, it was kind of the Scottish players or players that have played. The French-based Scotland players that are currently there, have been there, or are going there. Yeah, that were all the best players. Like Kinghorn was phenomenal.
Richie Kinghorn, Russell.
Yeah, Ben White. I thought Ben White, like
he was great, wasn't he?
He was like Luku. I think if you went pure head to head, I think Luku probably nudges it on the day because his box kicking was phenomenal. It was like second highest tackler or something ridiculous.
The distance on some of his box kicks are absolutely obscene, Luku.
But I think again, it was kind of a bit like with Fagerson. Like you saw when White goes off, he played until like 66 minutes. When as soon as he goes off, like they just look a little bit not as good. I just thought the engine, like the amount of the shift he put in, and he obviously does that like, cover back on the kick ahead from Luku, and it's mad to think. I think I put a tweet out that was something like, if you want to know how good the top 14 is, Ben White is lucky to get 15, 20 minutes at the end of a game like every week. And look how good he is. It's just mad. But yeah. And I think also just on the French-based Scottish players, I was thinking as I was kind of framing that, I was like, Russell's going back, isn't he? He's going back at some point.
Yeah,
he's not ending his career in Bar.
Do you think where do you think?
Toulouse. Imagine.
Do you reckon?
No, it'll be like I wouldn't be surprised if he went back to Racing, like
possibly.
Faz will go, and then I don't know. I just think he'll go back. Like it feels like he should, especially if like he doesn't make the Lions tour. Like he's the best fly half in the world. I don't care what anyone says. He's the best fly half in the world.
Best fly half in the world. Do you think?
Well, who's better? Richard doesn't count because he's not play. He doesn't play international rugby.
Well, he does, doesn't he? But he
hasn't played. Yeah, I know what you mean. But like currently playing any sort of international rugby. I just think he's the best fly half.
Yeah, maybe.
And the fact that people are like, oh, maybe you'd play Marcus Smith for Lions. Sorry, I did say on Twitter that we weren't going to talk about Lions on this, but yeah, absolutely raging. I just think it must be so tough being like the guy that you're basically, for your team to win, you have to play really, really well. And as soon as you make a mistake, everyone's like, oh, well, that's just the problem you have with this guy. Like, he's rubbish. And it's just like...
Yeah, there's also a bloke who has to extend himself. And obviously, the Scottish backline is very strong, isn't it? But for years, it hasn't been. And he has been out on a limb. And a lot of Scotland's, I don't mean this to be aggy or patronising, their kind of perceived success in at least the sense that they've had some big scalps and played some really good rugby has largely been pretty much down to Finn Russell. And people are naturally a bit sceptical of anyone who does things slightly differently, aren't they?
Yeah. I think generally, like the bench, just I've kind of touched on it, but like everyone kind of knew beforehand that Scotland don't really have the depth, especially with a couple of injuries like Scott Cummins not being there, for example, who I think is a really key cog when you're trying to defend the maul. Like he's one of the best maul defenders. Like to not have those guys, and you'll bring it. Like, I genuinely never heard of one of the blokes, Marshall Sykes. I genuinely never heard of him, and I've only really heard of Ewan Johnson because I know he plays in France. Like, just compared to Miafu, Gelange. That was always going to be the difference. And there was a kind of period, wasn't there, when those guys first came on of like 10 minutes, where that was the period that Scotland ran away with it.
Yeah,
sorry, France ran away with it.
Agreed. I don't want a breakdown of pernickety, technical, pedantic decisions from Matthew Carley, but I am interested in your view on the Pieto Malvaca Ben White incident, which few people have been not hugely impressed by in terms of both the decision and the actions of our man Malvaca. Thoughts?
Can I shock you?
Yes, you can.
I have absolutely no problem with any of it.
No problem with any of it?
No.
Explain.
I think Matthew Carley handled it really well, like on the field. I think it probably is a yellow because the force is, I think the official ruling was the force was not high, or element of danger was not high. I think that's fine. I think the fact that Ramos pushes Ben White over probably doesn't help the situation, and that probably what sparks it. And I think Malvaca is kind of a bit pissed off, and I don't think he intentionally headbutts him. I think he's just like lunging towards him, and his head makes contact with head, and like it happens. I think Ben Kaiser was kind of a bit like, there's nothing in that really. Like I just hope he doesn't get a red card for that, and I think I'm fine with it. I think I'm fine with it all round. How about you?
I think it's probably a red card.
Really?
I don't think it's like the most heinous thing I've ever seen, and it all kind of is
the law.
Well, I just think it's the problem with the kind of ruling for me is that it says it's not like a tackle situation, is it? So no. the danger element doesn't really come into it because you can't stand there. Like if two hookers come together in a scrum pops up and one of them gives a little nudge to anyone, that's always been perceived as a red card. And I think in that situation, I think he's a bit lucky. I don't think there's anything like wild in it, but I do think he's lost his head a bit, and I don't think he could have had any complaints if he did get gone. But yeah, it was a bit of a strange one. I just think the whole process, conversation another time, maybe the whole process around red cards and things feels like a proper mess at the moment.
It doesn't help, does it?
It's just, and that to me is not like the reason. I can see why, maybe there wasn't too much in it, but if it's a red, if you make accidental contact standing up in a tackle, I think it's probably a red if you're off the ball and go towards. At first, I was like, there's nothing there. He's basically tripped over, but I think there was a bit more. I did notice the guy trying to pull White off the floor was his teammate at Toulon, Jean-Baptiste Gros. I don't know if he was like, oh fuck, I can see he's about to get Pieto'd here, but yeah, there we go. These things happen.
One that should have been more was there's a tip tackle from the LBRA on Russell because I've literally just watched this on my way home, and he goes above the horizontal, and it's like, oh no, I don't think he goes above the horizontal. It's a dominant hit. It's like,
yeah, they're the things that are frustrating.
I've seen like it's pretty much it's not that dissimilar to like the Vanson Clerk, Sam Warburton one from back in the day. Like,
yeah, and it wasn't like the landing wasn't that dangerous, but he was a bit above the horizontal. So
and he did drive him downwards a little bit.
When you say what, like, it's stuff like that that's annoying, right? When like, well, he is because you can just see it. Like,
lands on his head / neck / shoulder area.
There we go. But France,
at least I'm not bitter about Scotland losing to potentially the best. I reckon that's the best Six Nations win or Six Nations Championship win without a Grand Slam. I think England 2001 is like one that's seen as like I don't think they won the Grand Slam that year, but they've broken like try scoring records. If you think that on another day that could have easily been 40 points to 17 or something rather than like 25-26 in the England game, like that we could have been looking at like 6 wins, like smallest margin being like 14 points or something like that. Like they were just utterly dominant in quite a lot of the games. The only one I'd say they were ultimately dominant in the England game as well, the one they lost. Like
first half they were. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video, March 27th.
So good, so good, so good. Easter deals starting at just $25 are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means tons of fresh reasons to rack.
They've got the best gifts.
Because I always find something amazing.
Save on Easter finds from Kate Spade New York, Calvin Klein, MAC Cosmetics, and more. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Yeah.
All right, then. Give us, I think we did this after the Autumn Internationals. I don't think anyone doubts that France deserved winners, but within that, been a few interesting folk involved, and selections have been rife in discussion. Winners and losers. We're going to go full, basic tabloid journalism here. I'm not going to do marks out of 10, but winners and losers in this France side.
My number one winner is the same as my number one from the autumn, which would be Louis Bielbiarré.
Yeah.
Because he is now a bona fide. He went from this guy's really cool, exciting, the most exciting young player on the planet to
superstar.
He's now gone from that to global superstar.
Yeah.
That's my first winner.
Very good. I'm going to go for his Bordeaux teammate, Maxime Lucu.
Oh, yeah, nice, okay.
Was fantastic. Was probably, I think, France's best player in their win against Ireland. He was, I think he's been awesome, given some of the travails he's had. And I saw actually something he was, apparently he was genuinely struggling after last year's Six Nations, and considering his future in the game and stuff like that. Such was the, his feeling of kind of disappointment after that. So, top man, hell of a player. Just a great bloke.
Nice redemption, that, isn't it? Also, still only lost one game for France, which is, I think, is the Marseille
wild.
Game.
Yeah.
The Ireland loss. Well, I thought you were going to go for the other player that I thought was the best player on the pitch against Ireland and was named the best player on the pitch against Scotland, and Yoram Moefana, who has had a coming of age tournament, and I think he could well end up being the official player of the tournament, because he was just exceptional he was so good in every single game. He was minimum 8 out of 10 in each game.
Yeah, nice. He was excellent, particularly at the back end. I think it was maybe a tiny bit quieter at the start. One thing I would say for Moefana and Lucu to an extent, it's been a bit of a tournament actually for guys who, across multiple teams, who have maybe not set the world alight in their first. Not anyone who's had any real problems or hiccups, but look at the sort of England teams. It's two of the big winners. Ben Curry, I know he's played 50 games, but Will Stewart,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a real propensity for people to go, not the whole kind of Eddie Jones test match animal thing.
Yeah.
And after 5 games going, that hasn't got it. And actually it's a little bit more complex than that. And Moefana is a brilliant example. We love him already. I'm going to go Jean-Baptiste Gros, just because he's a great player, really talented all-round prop, but he is possibly challenging Maxime Lucu for the best-looking bald rugby player in France. Just a suave fella. So extra point for that.
I think he was in our winners and losers in the autumn as well. I think another player who was on the edge of that, but also is definite winner from the Six Nations, Michael Gouillard. So another player we love, and another player who looks really good off the field as well. But I think to keep Miafu out the side is no mean feat, and I think kind of makes a little bit of a mockery of Rumat playing at the start of the tournament, because both sides of the ball just so physical. It was clearly what they needed.
Yeah. Final winner, I was going to say, to irritate you, I was going to go Roman Ntamack, but I'll say Oscar Jegu.
Yeah.
Who I thought of the young, that kind of pack of 4 or 5 young back rows. I felt he was maybe towards the back of that. And that still could be borne out, but can't say he hasn't taken his chance. He's been excellent. I think that Ireland performance will live long in the memory.
Yeah, that could be quite a moment in time, that.
Rob, we're a bit limited on the clock here. I don't want to sour those celebratory discussions by going too deep into the losers. So give me your Do you want to do three? Have you got three losers? Actually, scraping the barrel a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it. Well, one of my losers is again one of the losers from the autumn, Mathieu Jalibert. Like,
yeah,
unfortunately, like I don't know. I can't see him getting a game. I mean, I said that. I think I said that before, but I can't see him getting too many more chances, which is a real shame for a player of that talent. If he was English, you'd say, "Oh, just go off to France and earn a load of money." But he's already there.
Yeah. And play for Moana Pacifica with RD Surveyor, something like that. Yeah. I was struggling a bit on this because I think they were pretty good throughout. And losers maybe a bit strong, but gone for Oradu just off the basis of, I would say, of the new guys who've come in, he maybe felt like the one who didn't really make an impact, had a bit of a nightmare 10 minutes against England. Yeah. And then in that much vaunted 7-1 bench, got about 9 minutes in the last two games. Yeah. Young player, obviously immense potential. But that was my slightly far-fetched loser.
I saw a few comments online last week that were suggesting that he was only getting picked because his dad was mates with Fabien Galtier from when they played together at Stade Francais, and that was why he was getting picked. It cropped up quite a lot, like people saying like, "Oh, his dad's mates with Galtier."
Blimey.
I would say something.
It wouldn't be the first time there's been a bit of nepotism in French rugby. So.
Yeah. Not necessarily a loser, but someone whose stock has fallen perhaps slightly would be Nolan Le Garrec, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. Stock has fallen is a better way of putting it, I think, than loser per se.
Given that he could have been, this time last year, if you said that he'd be third choice and Luku would be the man tearing it up, you'd be hard pressed to believe that.
Yeah, agreed. Alrighty, Six Nations is done for another year. France will next be in action. There's a kind of probables type game, isn't there, at Twickenham in June, I think it is, against an England 15. And
we have no idea who's going to be eligible.
Yeah.
What the criteria will be or anything like that.
Should be fun though. You can mark your words, as I always say. Arthur Vincent will be there, probably skippering the side. Yeah, and then it's off to New Zealand in the summer, which, as I was saying just before we came on air, apparently Roman Entamac has made clear his desire to tour, which I imagine the Toulouse management might have something to say about. But I've got to say, I can totally get, why wouldn't you? I know obviously the season's brutal, but as a rugby player at the highest level, you'd want to be on that tour, wouldn't you? Like, if you can sneak
top 14 finals the last weekend of June, I think, because I was looking at this earlier. And then it's like 5th, 12th, and 19th of July is the tour. So if you think like the Lions, like Blair Kinghorn will be trying to get out, and Jack Willis will be trying to get out to Australia for the similar sort of time span. And it's like a similar sort of rarity these days. France playing in New Zealand, like
of course it is. We will see.
But for the French depth is ridiculous, isn't it?
Certainly is. We mentioned at the top. There was a bit more rugby. Was taking place on Friday night. France, sneaky little under-20s win. I mean, could argue that the two stories here are conceding 40 at home to Scotland, who'd struggled a bit, and Wales turning over England, which I did watch a bit of and was class. It was like absolute bedlam in Cardiff.
Yeah.
There was
sound good.
There's like a scrap in the corner, and there's definitely blokes in the stands like actually involved. It was top draw. But
George North's dad came in, did he?
Yeah, he was back there. Harry Nordick's dad came in. He knew something was going to kick off. But France beat Scotland 45-40 at the Stade Jean Bouin, and England's loss meant they won the tournament, having not been, necessarily fancied, slightly callower than in previous years. Yeah, you caught a decent chunk of this, right?
I watched the only bit of the England-Wales game I watched was during half-time of the Scotland-France game. Yeah, it definitely feels like a backdoor win, I have to say, because they were soundly beaten by it wasn't destruction on the scoreline, but they were never really in it in the England game. And I think England clearly had a bit of a caught Wales at a bad time, I think, maybe. But that said, the France-Scotland game was an absolute belter. Some of the some of the skill on show from both sides. I actually think the two best bits of skill were possibly from Scotland. And Scotland under 20s have not been good. They managed to not pick up the wooden spoon. Do you see who did get the wooden spoon in the under 20s?
Yeah, Ireland.
Yeah, remarkable, given that they were really good last year. They were pretty dire against France last week, I have to say. But Scotland under 20s have improved quite a lot. So there was one pass that is not overselling it, was Russell-like, and also like it's like a proper fizzer miss pass through the gap from Matthew Irwin. But there's also, I don't know if you've seen it, like the dot down from a guy called Cameron Van Veek, who doesn't sound particularly Scottish, but probably second on the list for most Scottish-looking people after groundskeeper Willie. Like,
class.
But it's one of those ones where it's a crossfield kick from Irwin, and it's probably just a bit too long, and he's right on the touchline, catches it above his head, lands, somehow stays in field, and like in one motion dots it down as he's like landing, and he's probably got about 15 centimeters to work with. It's phenomenal. But we're here to talk about France. I just wanted to stand up for Scotland because as Scotland suggests, they were really good.
Yeah, they're brilliant. Got to say as well, more Scotland call-outs. The drop goal by Irwin in the last seconds to like keep the game alive is absolutely amazing. Because basically it's like they're, whatever it is, 8 points adrift, 6 seconds on the clock, can't win the game. And he's done this like snap drop goal out of nowhere, in no position to do it. And you saw one of the French guys as it
goes over with time to go.
Like his head's in his hands. It's like suddenly, I don't know, I thought, they're going to go the distance here, and then they got turned over. But that was very cool. But yeah, I know you're pretty impressed by a few of the young French lads as well.
Yeah, I think, the one that probably stole the show on Friday night was a guy that we've talked about last week as a fantastic player, John Etchegaray, who there was like a bouncing ball that like got dropped, and he's like volleyed it in frustration. Like someone else dropped it. He's like on the touchline as well, like wellies it in frustration, and it goes through the post. And I think that
it's one of
those ones like that sums up the sort of he's having that sort of day. What I quite like about John Etchegaray, it might actually be Jon Etchegaray, but like he looks like he could easily be just your little John from around the corner, kind of your neighbour in somewhere in the British Isles. Like he looks very normal, which I feel is probably a harsh thing to say, but he's not normal on a rugby pitch. The first try he scores there's a goose step, and just the acceleration he manages to get from his goose step is frightening, absolutely ridiculous. He's kind of got both the bits of Thomas Ramos with also a little bit of, actually it might not have even been his try, I think he set it up, the one with the goose step, but also little bits of Leo Barrow with the kind of hip shift, kind of the way he can beat a man one-on-one. Real talent in quite a lengthy queue at the back on fullback for France.
Yeah.
The other player I was really impressed with in this was another guy we spoke about last week, but Oliver Cowie, who is just busy, like just looks to get involved, looks really comfortable, really confident. Yeah, just looks a really good, rounded, intelligent rugby player that's got a bit about him and a bit of confidence to kind of go hunting for stuff, which I quite like.
Got to say as well, the two guys you've mentioned there, I hadn't seen or heard this Oliver Cowie guy talk. I haven't seen much of the French under-20s, but I know you said because of his English roots, he's been drafted in after every game. And he is probably the most English-sounding man I've ever heard in my life. And secondly, the interview at the end with Jon Etchegaray, who I assume his English isn't great. They didn't really give him the option. They just made him stand there with his medal on while the interviewer talked at Cowie, and Cowie tried to sort of ruffle his head, point at him, but Etchegaray was
trying
just
to get him involved.
It was like sort of back in the day when, I don't know, it reminded me of watching Match of the Day years ago, where one of the Premier League teams gets in some random
Bielsa,
someone you've never heard of, or like a Bielsa or like a striker. Scores on debut. He's touched down at Southampton 3 hours before the game, and the poor bloke is made to like stand there like a hostage while someone talks about him next to him.
Lallana, like
it was
Jack
so
Grealish
good.
is like, yeah, he's a great player. Like,
he's a great player, great lad. And this poor bloke just has to smile and nod. Yeah, made me chuckle. Anyone else? I know you posited on our little agenda. Anyone here we might break through in the next kind of couple of years?
Well, a player that's really impressed. I don't know whether he'll break through, but just to finish up on the under 26 nations, our mate Wazim, Liam McCrabb, who I think might have finished as top try scorer. I don't quote me on that, but he certainly scored a lot of tries off that French maul. The other player I really liked, who was a completely new find, is Antoine Deliance, who I think was captain in this game, the 6, who the next in the line of the cross Jagu Rumat type kind of athlete around the park, does everything sort of thing. But I saw on it was the Drop Goal on Instagram, that's a quite big rugby account, does some quite cool stuff. They were kind of highlighting the France under-20s and the depth, and I kind of posited to them who would pick 3 players that could be full international capped before the end of the Six Nations in 2 years' time, before the end of the 2027 Six Nations, or within the next 18 months. And I think the 3 best, that's not necessarily the 3 best players, I don't think.
Yeah.
Other than perhaps Fabien Braubery, who we've spoken about before, who is already a really good player, has experienced the top 14. And also, but I think for him, it's because of the position he plays. Like, that's not an area of great strength. 12. They've got a lot of 13s, but they don't really have a 12. And I think he's sort of player that could come through. And then the others were very much like position based. So I think like Ugo Pacom, the fullback at Colomiers, who's off to La Rochelle, and John Etchegaray, back 3 players. They, similar to Jean Musquez as well, like he's played a bit of top 14, Bayonne, back 3 player, but France have got, they can't get Barre and Atis Ogbe in the team, and they're 20, 21. Like, there's just so many good players. And I think like when you think like how good Ferte was last year, and how good Gabin Law has been at Beziers and is going to go into top 14 next year. So I went for, I can't actually remember who the second one I went for was, but I went for McGurby, the tight head
24 stone Stade Toulousain man.
Supposedly the heaviest man in the Toulouse squad, which I find incredibly hard to believe, given that
Miafu
Manny Miafu is in that Toulouse squad.
Yeah.
I think just because he's a tight head, and it's not an area of great. You mentioned it earlier, like what can they get out of Colom and Tatafu, but also for Toulouse, like what can they, Aldeguiri has got to be on the way out, but what can they get out of Merkler? Can McGurby kind of overtake Merkler? It's not a great area of strength for Toulouse. Obviously, they're going to get Colom, but there could be points this time later on this season where McGurby gets some game time. Feels like sort of bloke, if you're already 150 kilos, albeit possibly not 150 kilos, but if you're already 150 kilos at 18, 19, 20, he could be fast-tracked in the same way that they tried to fast-track Demba Bamba. They ultimately did fast-track Jean-Baptiste Gros. Feels like they might try and do that. The other one I went for, not Ibsayen, who I thought was brilliant, Elijah Ibsayen, the number 8. But again, there's just too many, they can't get Gazzotti or Nucci or Castro Ferreira into a France squad at the moment. So how do you get someone that's played even less top 14 stuff than them? I went for Diego Jord. So the guy that played fly half in the first few games and picked up an injury against England. I don't know how bad that injury is, but I thought he was exceptional. His goal kicking was great. Again, not an area like behind the obvious candidates of Entamac, Jalabert, Ramos. There's not a whole hope of, like there's Birdo, but like late 20s, never really done that much.
Yeah, Lebrun got called up, didn't he, to the wider squad, but
Royce has had to move clubs. He would have been like, if you'd asked me this time last year, then it'd be, Royce would be the next bright young thing at 10. But I wonder if Jourde, because Jourde again could get game time at La Rochelle, because La Rochelle have been such a shambles and they've had injuries at 10, he could get game time. So those would be my 3 potentially. Anyone else that you'd add?
Yeah, I would say, again, a bit positional, but just the profile of him. 12, Diana Vuku's also at La Rochelle. Bit of a lump. They haven't got that much. They've got some strength there, but I think he could kick on.
I haven't quite decided on him because the raw materials are clearly there. I just don't. Obviously, he played a role in the own try of the season, potential candidate for own try of the season. But I think seeing a lot of like, I don't know how much like he's different to Browbury. He seems like a very intelligent ball player, whereas Danivuku seems like the kind of kid that is relying on his raw materials a bit much.
Yeah, but as a
maybe it's just
big hitting 12. Yeah. And the other one who I don't think he played. He didn't start, but he did start in this game. Was Jacques Ngimbu, I think he pronounced it.
Yeah, second row.
Who caught the eye. He made his debut in the Champions Cup against the Sharks off the bench, and one is a big boy and just looked to the manner born. And I also think he could get game time relatively quickly at Bordeaux with Petty's going, isn't he? You've got Gray, obviously, but there's a way in the next season or so, you'd think. And also, as we've seen in, they've got some outstanding second rows, France, but we've seen Rumat play there. I don't think Oridu is the option right now. Obviously, there's some other guys who would probably put their hand up, but I could see a way that he gets a gig in the next couple of years. Have
you got an inside track on that? Like, because the big question is his dad mates with Fabien Gaultier? Because that's what it's going to come down to. And if
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I do know that when I Googled him earlier, he does have a LinkedIn page. And whether this is legit or not, I don't know. But it says he's a waiter at Pentagon Restaurant in Bordeaux.
Wow.
But his LinkedIn profile picture is him in his full Bordeaux kit. Like, proper flex.
Love that.
Yeah, he's going to go far.
Yeah.
He's going to go far. We probably need to leave it there and come back and talk the return of the top 14.
Yes.
Whether it's a movie night or just midday, Skinny Pop is a salty snack that keeps on giving. Made with just 3 simple ingredients for an irresistibly delicious taste and a large serving size that lasts. Deliciously popped, perfectly salted. Skinny Pop, popular for a reason. Shop Skinny Pop now.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Okay, the top 14 is back. We still have to wait another week for Pro Day 2, but we enter the, last 7 games of the regular season, as they might call it
I think it's 8. It's 8 if you include this round, yeah.
Still a fair old crack, other than just being excited for the return of the top 14. So we've got, as we said, I think before the break, we've kind of got this like slightly 3 chunks league where we've got the 3 teams at the top, Toulon, Toulouse, Bordeaux, who appear to be fairly set, you'd suggest. And then 5th to 10th with 8 or 9 wins, a couple of bonus points separating them. And then kind of 11th, 12th, and then looking at the access match and automatic trapdoor slot, 6 or 7 wins each.
Yeah.
Say Van Perpignan, Racing on 6.
So you've got... Right? So the weird one is the kind of fourth. Fourth doesn't, like, Bayonne have double figures wins. They're the only other team outside of Toulouse, Bordeaux, and Toulon who have double figure wins. Cast have 9 wins and a draw, but they are 5 points behind Bayonne and they're only 2 points ahead of Lyon. So we're putting him in that. Cast in 5th are going into that middle section, and La Rochelle in 10th are 4 points behind Cast in 5th with 8 wins. And everyone above them also only has 8 wins. Lyon, with their couple of draws, are kind of at the top edge of that. Whereas in 11th, there's a 6-point gap between La Rochelle in 10th and Stade Francais in 11th. They have 7 wins. Racing and Perpignan 6 wins and a draw. Vannes 6 wins. So that is kind of, you can categorize it. There's little areas where there are more than 4 points between. So you can kind of stratiferize it. Is that a word?
I'm not sure it is.
But I think that's where the kind of there's intrigue in like every bit of that. I think, like, which segment interests you the most of those 3 segments?
It's hard to look past the bottom of the table just because of the stature and the fact that you've still got Stade and Racing very much in that mire. I think it's hard to look past. I think actually the bit that's interesting is maybe that kind of fourth place, because Bayonne have probably had a better season than any of us anticipated. And the two kind of big hitters, you would say, certainly in terms of like squad depth, perceived quality, Montpellier and La Rochelle, have very much been going the other way. It's not like they sort of come out of a rut, or a bit like, Montpellier did last year, or they've had they have had a sporadic season, but they have been in something of a bit of a decline, both of them, after, reasonable-ish starts. So I think for me, it's whether it's that sort of fourth place. Can Lyon mount a charge? Can Cast pick up enough away from home to stay in the fight for a barrage spot, which I'm unfortunately not entirely convinced by. Yeah,
well, I can tell you, Richard, having listened back to last year's podcast today, Cast were in 5th at the equivalent period last year, and
they bombed it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, they were still in.
No, they missed out on
the
like
last game.
Yeah,
but they bombed it and then like scraped back. So I don't know. Can I see? I suppose the question is, and I think you mentioned this when we were kind of WhatsApping earlier, is can you see any of those being broken? Is anyone going to get pulled from that kind of middle pack? Is anyone going to get pulled into the relegation battle in 4 weeks' time if they go on a bit of a crap trot? And is anyone? I think the top 3, the order I don't know, but I think the top 3 is sussed.
Yeah.
And then who can get that last? 4th would be a home barrage match.
4th plays 5th in the barrage.
So that feels like the big prize. Who can secure that?
We may have attracted the odd new listener, maybe 1 or 2 probably, after Six Nations. So top 14, for anyone that isn't clear on it, the top 2 go automatically into the semi-finals, and then 3rd to 6th go into the barrage, which is effectively a quarter-final. 3rd plays 6th, 4th plays 5th, with 3rd and 4th teams getting home games. The winner of those games then goes into the semi-finals, which is a neutral venue, which this year is in Lyon.
Lyon, yep.
Yep. And then the winner of so they'll be on consecutive days. And then the winners of those go into the final, which will be back at the Stade de France this year. At the bottom, 14th gets automatically relegated, as happened to Oyonnax last year. 13th goes into a access match, as it's called, basically a playoff against the second or the losing finalist of the Pro D2 final, which was Montpellier last year, and they won that game against Grenoble to stay up. So 13th doesn't get you automatically relegated. You've got a chance against a Pro D2 team. But Sam Davis on our podcast a few weeks ago did say that he thought he does think that 2 Pro D2 teams will go up, which I find interesting because, as he said, I think 13th could easily be Stade Francais or Racing, which is mental. Imagine having Owen Farrell if he's in that access match. That's quite a key. Like if he does get fit, there's still rumours about. I'm not talking about the Lions, but there's still rumours abounding about the Lions, and it's just remarkable to think that people are even considering him on this season's form because he's looked so off the pace. I think the bit, quite perhaps parochially, the bit that interests me most is that middle section because A, Poe are in it, and B, I can't quite work out in that 5th to 10th. So Cast, Lyon, Clermont, Montpellier, Poe, La Rochelle. I couldn't tell you who the best team of that bunch is. I think I would probably lean towards it being Cast, but I couldn't tell you who the second best team in that bunch is. I probably lean towards it being Clermont if they've got everyone fully fit. which they didn't towards the end of that, and they really badly needed that break. Whereas Lyon could have done without the break. They were going quite well. La Rochelle needed a break because they were shambles. Pau were going quite well before the break. Montpellier probably needed, like, they were kind of all either in need of the break or the break was coming at a bad time. I just don't know who's good in that. And I think that's some real intrigue.
It's really
it will
tricky.
Change every week. It will change. Like, we'll probably have these games and Pau will end up like 6th, and then they'll probably end up the following week in 10th. Like, that's how this is going to go, I think, for the next 3-4 rounds.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting that the two there you think of maybe the strongest. I mean, that they've been awful, haven't they? But yeah, you would think in theory La Rochelle can't slide much further, but then we've said that at various junctures throughout the season, and it's been horrible. So
we've also said it about Racing and Stade.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, and it's unforgiving. The team I think are really dangerous, and from that 4th downwards, I'm not sure I'd want to go and play Lyon in a barrage game. I think they've just got that. They've got that like bit of sprinkling of stardust, haven't they? With Niniashvili, Quiu, enough of the fundamentals. They're going to have, they've got. Hopefully, they'll have a good run of Guillard. He's going to go back as the new kind of big man of French rugby, and I think, and also I do feel
10 that kicks goals.
Yeah, they've kind of got. We've said it before about Lyon, and they went on that like 8-match losing or non-winning run, didn't they? And they have got a bit of implosion in them. But I don't know. Niniashvili last season, you could before he goes to La Rochelle, you could see that meaning something. I honestly don't know, but it's beautifully poised. It really is.
I think they do seem a different side since the arrival of Karim Ghazal, and that is arguably they needed basically someone to organise their pack into something constructive.
Yeah.
Which seems to be what Karim Ghazal is quite good at as a coach, and
he's just
seem to have completely turned around their form since he's
just signed in the last week. I think a longish term deal at Lyon. He's confirmed into the next, well, certainly next season, which is it's great for him, great for Lyon. I think, as you say, based on what we've seen since he arrived from Stade Francais. Yeah, pretty exciting.
I think you only need to look at Stade Francais this season to last season to see the impact he had there. I think definitely. So the other question I asked you was which sides can you see going more than 2 places away from their current position, or which sides can you see switching between the stratospheres?
God, I was worried about Castres getting dragged into the mire because I was looking at a couple of the games they have coming up, and actually, I don't know, they're probably all right. And it's the same for everyone else. Like, it sounds so obvious, but everyone's going to go through that. I think Stade Francais will drag themselves out. I don't think they're going to challenge barrage, but I think a few weeks back we said of that. Well, at the time it was kind of Pau as well. Before they had a nice little run, they were the team I felt most comfortable about avoiding that 13th, 14th spot. So potentially they could sneak through. And I do genuinely feel, okay, maybe not between proper stratospheres, but I feel like Lyon into 4th place and getting a home barrage. They're the two for me I can see making some proper shifts.
The ones interesting you went Stade Francais, I actually think the one team that could jump up from that bottom 4 is actually Racing, which is weird because I am normally the one cheering for Stade Francais and you're normally the one cheering or support, like giving the case for and I think
I get that.
Because I think Faz is going to be fit, and it's a big if he gets fit and finds some form, and you have a backline of Le Garrec, Farrell, Tuisova, Fiku, Habosi, Sam James, Max Spring, like that's a backline that should be
not be struggling, should it?
Yeah, and it does all hinge on, can Faz get fit and can he do the job that he was kind of brought in? It's amazing listening to last year. I was like talking about Racing not having any halfbacks and not having any direction in their backline. It's like, oh wow, that's quite similar to this year, because it all kind of hinges on Le Garrec and Farrell, and if they do get fit and they can find a relationship and a partnership, they will be good. They will be fine.
There's a bit of a kind of mental, for want of a better word, thing to that, isn't there? Of Farrell coming back for a tussle at the bottom. It feels, it's a big old cliche, but it feels like exactly the sort of fight that.
Yeah.
You can see that kind of big fist pump as he sends someone down, and there'll be a dodgy no arms tackle in there that who knows?
Yeah,
could be fun to watch.
The other ones that I think could move between those bands, I do think Poe could easily slide back down into that battle because they had a good run. They've got a horrible run coming up. If they win against Montpellier on Saturday, that could be really key because that then does give them a cushion before they go to Toulouse and Bordeaux. And I'm going to say La Rochelle, but I don't know which way.
Yeah.
I do think they could either click and be kind of back to being good and sneak into the barrage, or they could go the Racing route and the depths keep getting deeper. I genuinely don't know. I think they've got so many, you look how many players they've got in that French squad that have played so well in the Six Nations. They just can't. They've got players in form that know the system, and I think that's going to count for something at some point.
You would think so. This weekend, just a quick nod. La Rochelle host my boys Cast. You would assume a few of those French players, or Aldrit, Boudon, might get a bit of time to put their feet up. I did see a picture of Greg Aldrit, Gelanche, and Dupont earlier having what looked like a long lunch. And Aldrit did not look like a man who would be playing this weekend. He looked slightly...
They're 3 boys from Osh, aren't they?
Yeah. Is it Osh? Is that how you pronounce it? That was the caption underneath, like the sort of Osheloise or Osheboise or something like that.
Was Tony D smiling? Because he looked very sad on Saturday.
Not massively.
Yeah.
Little bit of a kind of happy grimace, I guess. I don't know if Cast are going to get anything out of that. If they get a losing bonus point, I'd probably be pretty happy. But if they can raid the Marcel de Flanders a few times teams have done this year, that'd be quite fun.
Could be a real window to the soul of La Rochelle, that game. We could see which way they're going to go. Because if they could easily kind of run out and put 40 points on Cast, and it's like, okay, well, they're actually going to be good. Or if they kind of scrape a win that they're kind of lucky to get, then that battle is going to continue.
We will see. Pau Montpellier, in times gone by, the Simonsico, but Sam Simmons has generally been on the bench or not in the squad of late. I think, will we see their uncle with the half and half shirt as per last year or earlier this year? Fancy that?
It's at the Hamo, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be quite key. I mean, it's not a great matchup for Pau, is it? They're with Montpellier's pack is very, very strong. I just think it might be quite a good time to catch them. It could, and that again could be because Montpellier were going really well, and then they've started to unravel slightly. It'll be interesting to see. Again, that's a kind of window to the soul of both those sides and kind of where they're at and which way they're going in this run-in.
Yeah, and then there's a load of other games going on, obviously, but the showpiece is Sunday night. It is Sunday night, isn't it?
As it was after the Six Nations last year, remarkably. Same fixture. Amazing how that happens.
Bordeaux-Bègles, Toulouse at the Matmut Atlantique, sold out very quickly.
Is it the Atlantique?
I believe so, yeah. You would imagine shorn of a few superstars, but will probably be quite a good watch. That's my pre-game spiel on that.
Do you think Jalibert's back from his holiday in Rio de Janeiro?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, he was there, wasn't he, on Saturday? He was in the crowd. He was sat next to Dupont, yeah.
They are friends then. It is at the Matmut Atlantique.
Should be a beat.
Toulouse going to win that.
Yeah, I reckon they probably will.
Yeah.
Looked imperious, haven't they, of late?
Yeah.
Okay, back in a sec to round up. Petit-Fours, God, that was American. Digestifs, haven't got much, but I've got a couple that have kept me amused, interested in the week.
Got the big rumour of the week, which I don't think is confirmed yet, but Nice building quite the squad for National next season, with possibly the addition of Brice to Nice, I think I saw as one caption. Brice Dulin possibly going to Stade Niçoise next season, which to add to who else they got? Wasea, Naifalevu, Thompson
Rumours
Stringer.
of Falatau, aren't there?
Oh yes, that was it. Yeah, that was the one I saw.
Yeah.
Falatau was bandied about for Nice, Provence, and
Grenoble put out a statement saying they hadn't spoken to him. So expect him to sign for Grenoble in the next couple of weeks.
They need to replace King Pio.
Well, exactly. What did I have? I had a couple of things that were interesting in the week. One, so we spoke about Montpellier nearly relegated last year in the top 14. Their football team this year are having a bit of a nightmare. Their ground was muted as a potential venue replacement for the GGL, given its pitch issues. But that in itself might be problematic. Montpellier were losing 2-0 at the weekend in Ligue 1 to Saint-Etienne. So their fans took the clever decision to start a fire in the stand, which resulted in the game getting called off.
No! That's amazing.
Not the first time they have a bit of form. A couple of years ago, they were actually playing Clermont football team. And I mean, it's not that funny, but someone threw a firework at Clermont's goalkeeper and the game got abandoned then as well. So
bit fruity down in Montpellier.
Something in the water in Montpellier.
Wow. Well, I think the only other things we were looking at the various different off days that some of the teams have had. So a few teams that we've been following. Colin Turplotu put up on his feed kind of a day out at a local vineyard in Jurançon near Pau, and they basically had a day of a feast of amazing steak and local wines, which looked fantastic. Bayonne were down on the beach playing beach volleyball, which looked like quite a serious setup. Gio Habel-Kufner and Manu Tuolangi on the same side looked like quite a lot of fun. And your boys, I couldn't quite work out what they were doing, Cast.
Some sort of army-themed adventure, which looked slightly less relaxing. There was a great photo of
looking like a hero.
Nick. Yeah. He looked like just exciting as well, because he must be coming back into some sort of fitness.
He's definitely relatively fit, because I saw him do a box jump in the gym, and I've got the photo here. It's, I think, about a meter of box.
Not bad.
Quite high.
Wow. Yeah, decent.
He lands quite comfortably. That's basically 2/3 of my height. Yeah.
Superb.
Quite scary, that.
Alrighty, I think we're at time. So, Rob, you can follow us on all the usual channels.
We are at Rosbeast Rugby on all social media: YouTube, X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky.
Not LinkedIn, so we can't connect with Jacques and Gimbu just yet, but we will do.
And drop us an email, rosbeastrugby@gmail.com.
Alrighty.
Give us a review. Give us a review.
Been Rob.
Yeah, go on.
Review us. We're out. Enjoy the return of the top 14. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.